Gold, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. As a regular listener, you may know that very infrequently now, I do special episodes with my colleague, dear friend, and now a brand new podcaster, Dr. Laura Froyen. She's with me today, and we have our very special episode in Parenting in Pandemic. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Anna. Oh, I'm so glad to be back on this podcast with you. I love it. And honestly, being a regular guest on your podcast is what made me fall in love with podcasting to begin with and encouraged me to start my own. So thank you for that. So I'm Dr. Laura Froyen. I have my PhD in Human Development and Family Studies with a specialization in couple and family therapy. And I help parents find more practices that are aligned with them, with their purpose. I help them parent from a place of connection and compassion as opposed to control. And I help them find more peace and calm and ease in their lives as parents. And I do this in a number of ways through courses, my Facebook group, and then now through a podcast called The Balanced Parent, where we explore topics kind of related to balanced living as a parent. We do lots of talk on inner growth and healing triggers so that you can be the calm, peaceful parent you were meant to be. We talk about healthy relationships with the grown-ups in our lives, our partners, and our other loved ones. And we kind of just talk about balanced parenting in general.
Yes, I'm so excited you pulled the trigger eventually after a very long time and started your own podcast. Congratulations. And I highly encourage my listeners who know and adore you to subscribe to your show, rate and review, as it's important in the beginning for a podcaster to have the subscribers, the listeners, and the reviews. I enjoy it, and I was very honored to be your very first guest.
Yes, I couldn't think of anybody else that I would have wanted to be with me on that for my first guest. I'm so glad that you were there. And that episode is live now, and it's wonderful. Anna gives her very best tips and insights on how to overcome overwhelm, manage stress, and bring a little bit more peace, ease, and calm into your day-to-day life. And the tips, while we kind of talked about how stressful things are in this moment in time, they are applicable to parenting in general, whether we're in the midst of a pandemic or not. It's a beautiful episode. You should definitely go and listen to Anna's wisdom.
And that is the topic, actually, I invited you to talk about on my podcast. And I hope this will be a very helpful and packed with a lot of practical tools as usual episode for our listeners. But just to remember something, last year around this time, we held the Authentic Parenting Conference, the first live event. And I got to meet you in person for the first time. And I was telling another podcaster friend that I knew you from an online world. We did the podcast episodes together. But when I met you in real life, it was like, wow, I fell in love with you. I said to my friend, she's a even better person than I have imagined her to be. So I'm so truly grateful for your friendship, for what we have built and gone through together and how we have helped our community. And I know people love our juicy stories from our own parenting lives. Yes, we're going to share. But I was reminiscing on the conference. I posted on Instagram pictures from last year's event. And sadly, this year, with this situation, with the coronavirus, even though I had picked a date, October 17, for the Authentic Parenting Conference, it will not be happening this year. So
I'm so sorry about that.
Yes, me too. So it was a great time though, right?
Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful. And you guys, you at some point you have to meet Anna in person because she embodies authenticity to like the 10th degree. She, you hear it in her voice. And when we do these podcasts, I get to see her kind of, we're face to face on, over the internet. But in real life, she's just so herself and lovely and honest. And it's just, I don't know, it was wonderful to meet you and be in that space.
Yes.
And that space that you provided for parents was just so lovely and inspiring.
Likewise, Laura. Okay, enough of the love bombing and and promoting and self-promoting. Tell us a pandemic juicy parenting story. What do you have for us today?
Yeah. Okay. So this one is one. So this happened just last night, actually. And it's one of those times. So I'm teaching a course with another friend on parenting as a team. And it's just such a great example. Like, I was so glad it happened so that I can use it to teach people, so it definitely, like, this was a parenting mistake that happened, but there was also repair in it. And it's just a beautiful example of how conscious parenting and respectful parenting, authentic parenting is not perfect parenting. So last night, I have one daughter who is a little bit more stubborn or strong-willed or whatever kind of label you want to put it on her, but she can be challenging. And she's really averse to being told what to do. So when we were getting ready for bed and it was time to tuck her in, we always, have our kids go to the bathroom right before going to sleep so that they don't wake up in the night, don't have disrupted sleep, etc. And this daughter has a history of refusing to do that. And when she refuses, sometimes she has an accident in the night. And so I was tucking my little one in, and while my husband was kind of dealing with this refusal, and he got sucked into a power struggle. He got triggered. He got caught up in the stories in his head of, it shouldn't be this hard. She's almost 7.5. She should just listen to me. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to help her. Doesn't she know that? Just all those things that we say to ourselves, they run through our heads. And if they run through our heads unchecked and unquestioned, then they really impact our behavior. And that's what happened for him. And in the midst of this trigger and being really frustrated, he had a very human moment when I didn't hear this. I heard about it later, but he said to her, all right, fine. If you have, you don't have to go to the bathroom, but if you have an accident in the middle of the night, I am not helping you get cleaned up. I'm not helping you change your sheets. And she broke down and cried. And it was really, it was not his best moment as a parent. And I have his permission to share this story because he knows it will help others. And so I heard kind of the explosion that happened after he said that, the slamming of doors, the crying. So I wrapped up tucking in my other little one. And I went into my older one's room to take her she wears an appliance at night for her teeth, a spacer, because she has some crowding issues. So I brought her appliance in and handed it to her. And she told me what Dad said. And I reassured her, like, honey, you know that's not your dad. Your dad will always help you. And I'll go talk to him. And so I went to go talk to him. And I think that on the outside, that might look like undermining, like that he had set a limit. It was a limit that I knew he would never follow through on. It was a completely empty threat. It's that what he said was completely outside of our goals for parenting. It was outside of his core values around kind of how we support and guide our children. And honestly, like, he's the most patient person at night. Like, when things like that happen at night, he's the one who goes in because he's not grumpy. I go in the middle of the night and I'm out of it and I'm totally tend to be grumpy. The kids prefer him to be the one who goes in and helps them at night. So we all knew that wasn't true and that wasn't going to happen. And that, I think, was the most hurtful thing to my daughter, was that he would say it and essentially be lying to her and just say it kind of in this way that is a threat, And so then after I left her room, I went down and I sat down next to him on the bed, and he was just kind of sitting on our bed next door. I sat down next to him and I didn't say anything. I put my hand on his shoulder and I just tried to flow love and compassion through my body, through my hand. I really concentrated on sending it to him. And then I just said, what happened? And he told me what happened. And I validated it. I heard him. I empathized. It's hard. She can be challenging. She's super triggering. Yeah, yes, it gets me thinking those things too sometimes. It's super easy to get caught up into it. I just validated that whole time, And then he told me what the threat that he had made. And I said, oh, honey, that's not you. That's not going to happen. He goes, I know. He was able to say, recognize, yeah, I know it was a mistake. That's not really what's going to happen. I got caught up. I shouldn't have said it. And then he went to repair, and she was still really upset. And she didn't want to see him. And about 10 minutes later, she asked if I could come in, and I laid down with her and snuggled, and we talked about it. We talked about how he was listening to his inner critic and was believing it instead of believing her. And we processed it, and she went to sleep. And then the next morning when she came out of her room, she crawled into bed with him and snuggled, so but that's what repair looks like. So sometimes it's not this picture perfect Instagram story where they make up and it's beautiful and it's all love and rainbows. She was still mad when she went to sleep last night, but she woke up having forgiven him, and he made it clear to her that he had made a mistake. He owned how he was wrong, and he apologized and reassured her that he wouldn't punish her in that way, or by withholding help and assistance. And so, it wasn't a perfect parenting moment. It was a real parenting moment. It was, that's what happens sometimes when we're parenting, and it's about repairing and owning it and supporting each other, not just in backing each other up when they maybe say something that's not, they lay down a rule or a consequence that, doesn't fit with what you've decided as a team to parent, how you've decided to parent. Sometimes we think supporting each other means that, well, we'll back you up no matter what. In this moment, supporting looked like me compassionately and empathetically calling my husband back to his core values and to how he really wants to parent. And it was done gently and in a way that allowed himself to be called back. So he didn't feel shamed or blamed or judged for how he reacted, because we all have bad reactions. So anyway, that's the story I wanted to share.
Yes.
It's long, sorry.
It's a long story, but it's a beautiful story, right? It's about you, the partners, and your child. And yes, children are so forgiving and loving. I love that about children.
They are. They're, and I think too, when we model that for them, they become even more so. We let them see us make mistakes. We let them see us be human, and we own the mistake, and we work to repair, and that's good modeling for them.
That's a very good lifelong lesson.
Yeah.
Instead of holding a grudge, being resentful and angry, bottling up feelings and letting this issue last longer than it has to, right? Sometimes when we don't do the repair in the moment, it becomes even a bigger issue, right? Later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I think an important piece of this modeling too is the not beating yourself up over the mistake that you made. So we talk a lot about, I think in the parenting world, we hear that we need to model things like repair and making mistakes to our kids, but we also have to model self-compassion too. So being able to recognize I made a mistake and I'm human and I'm still worthy of love and compassion and gentle treatment, even when I make a mistake. And my husband did a good job of that too, of owning a mistake without beating yourself up for it. There's a difference between those two things. There's a difference between saying yeah, I made a mistake and I'm human and I will probably make a mistake again in my life versus I'm an awful mom. I can't believe I said that. I'm terrible to you. You deserve a better mom. Those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself is a practice. I think we all have to cultivate and practice, because sadly that doesn't come naturally to all of us, many of us.
No, it doesn't. But why not? Why doesn't it come naturally?
Because it wasn't modeled for us, right?
Exactly, right?
Yes.
Exactly. And so if we want it to come naturally for our kids, we have to consciously engage in that process ourselves, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Anna, after my super long story, I would love to hear a little bit about how things have been going for you during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, things have been going actually pretty good in my family, in my household. And I almost feel guilty for having it, quote unquote, too good. But again, I don't have multiple children. I have a 12-year-old who is very independent, self-sufficient. She can make breakfast for herself. She can get snacks for herself. She does independent learning. I have not once, I'm admitting this, logged into the parent portal to check, her schedule, her grades, what she's up to, because she's on top of that all. And so it's been pretty peaceful in our household in terms of parenting stories. I think partly, and I'm reflecting on this now, is because my daughter doesn't have the regular stress of going to school, being in a school with a lot of children, dealing with the noise and the demands and the expectations and the structure and the long day and not eating well, getting up early. Her boss used to pick her up at 6:40 a.m., right?
Oh, wow.
So that was tough in and of itself. Now she goes to bed at a reasonable time. She doesn't go to bed at 9 p.m. She can go to bed after 10 sometimes, but she gets up late. So she gets enough sleep, enough rest, and her behavior, her mood is completely different. The anxieties, the stress, the quote unquote misbehaviors, the talking back, the attitude is no longer there. And those were stress related factors I am noticing.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating to see that.
Yes.
Those things had nothing to do maybe with your parenting or, anything wrong with her, that she's stressed and now she has less stress and it's easier for her to be her sweet self.
And there's less work, right? Because when you're in school, they spend 6 hours in school, but how much time do they spend on actually doing the learning part? Very little, right? And so she completes her assignments very quickly. She manages her time. A lot of good things came out of this remote learning. She has become very organized of her time, of her assignments. Yes, she has made mistakes. She has said, Sunday evening, oh, I have something due tomorrow morning. But we are allowing her the time and the space to learn to manage her schedule, her assignments. And I see she's really learning and flourishing in that department. It makes me very happy. So I see the independence rising. I also see that I am not as quote unquote involved as a parent. I am more tending to my own needs, which I wasn't doing as much as I'm doing now. I take longer walks now. I take more walks during the day now. I watch a Netflix show now, which I haven't watched in perhaps years. And so I have a little bit of more me time, more of, independent time. And I think it's not because I'm being selfish. I am managing my own stress, but also I don't need to be involved a lot. I don't need to prepare lunch. You know what I mean? Like,
You're stepping back.
I'm stepping back because I'm not needed anymore. And so, and things have been very good in our family. So I don't have a story to tell. Like I was thinking, is there a particular story that stands out? No, there isn't. So I'm happy to report there isn't a story, but maybe it's just a storm about to, happen. But I don't think so. So we've been all getting rest and a lot of together time, but we all also have been getting alone time in our family, which I encourage to other people too. And let's face it, I have been very loose with screen time with my daughter. in terms of, she still has the same screen time guidelines that I set in December when we first purchased a phone for her. And we have discussed that in our episode together, in our last episode in March, about play. she still has 1.5 hours per day, but she's been using computer to play Roblox. And it's not such a bad thing, this Roblox thing. They're building homes with friends, inviting each other to pool parties and stuff like that. So I don't view it as this wasted time. And it's actually, she wants to become an architect, and she's building, she has always said that she wanted to be an architect or an interior designer, and she has a knack for it. So this game has been very good for her because she's using her skills, her abilities, and creating stuff. And so things have been great for us.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Honestly, I think that there have been some different stressors in my life right now with my family, but both of my kids stopped biting their nails about a month into being home from school. And that was always an anxiety behavior for both of them. Or a boredom behavior. And they're not bored anymore. They're following their interests. We do primarily child-led learning in our home too. So if there's an assignment that her teacher assigns and it's not interesting, we find a way for her to just do an approximation of the assignment in something that she's interested in.
I see that I see your life through Instagram, and you see mine. And I would encourage the listener to follow both of us if they want to see how we are doing our own parenting. And I have interviewed my daughter about the pandemic in the beginning, which I plan on asking her questions now too, about the upsides and the downsides of this quarantine. We're still in quarantine in my state of New Jersey. And so my daughter has been cooking, baking, making drinks. She's been engaging in a lot of free, open, creative play type of things, spending time outdoors a lot too. And I see that your children are doing a lot of interesting things too, like child-led activities and playtime, which is great. What's your handle on Instagram?
Oh, it's Laura Froyen, PhD. But if you are on Instagram and you type in the word Froyen, you'll find me.
Okay.
There's not very many of us out there.
And I am authentic.parenting.podcast. I want people to find me through that handle. And, and so, so we've been doing that. I also noticed that the teachers give very creative projects to my daughter, and they don't have a grading system that has changed. It's either pass or incomplete. And the project that she has been working on, they were so interesting. They're interesting even for me. For example, this week she has to listen to TED Talks and create her own TED Talk.
Fun.
How great is that, right?
That's awesome. Oh, that's so great. Okay, so I have a question for you, Anna. Can I ask one? Is that okay?
Of course, yes, go ahead.
So something that I've been thinking about because our state is in phase 1 of reopening. And, there's all of this information out there about what school's going to look like next year. And I kind of, and you've been talking about how things feel peaceful and calm, and you've been able to step back and everybody's stress is reduced. That certainly is true at my house. There's much less stress, much less rigid schedules, much more go with the flow, follow our interests, be inspired, lots of independent play happening at my house. So it makes me wonder, so what are your, how can we maintain this flow, this ease, this peace when things start going back to normal? And how can we decide intentionally what we allow to bring back into our lives, and and what we keep from this time, the lessons that we've learned from this time, how we keep those with us. I'm curious about what your thought process is like, and maybe it's too early for that. I don't know.
No, it's not. I've been thinking this since the beginning. I think life will never be the same for everyone. Let's talk about education. I have never been in favor of formal education. I'm not against it completely, but I think it needs a lot of redesign and reform and all of that. So let's just say that blanket statement. I'm not, in favor of formal education. That's not be all. It's not the end of everything, right? However, my daughter loves school. I encouraged her to be homeschooled. She doesn't like that idea. If the schools reopen here in my state in September, and if they are following those guidelines, desks are far away from each other, children are wearing masks, I'm not comfortable with that. In fact, I'm not comfortable sending my daughter to school, period. What I see is happening is amazing. I wish and I hope that the schools will change. This will change the face of education and shake things up in the world and see. And let's see what can happen. Remote learning is possible. How can we bring more of that, but by keeping some other elements that are great, like the social elements? I would love to see a big creative change in the education system. I don't know how it may look like, but I wish that would happen. My life hasn't changed that much, to be honest. I always worked from home a lot. I did the podcast and my work. I mean, I have a physical office that I miss, and I don't go to my office. And I'm seeing all my clients over Zoom. And sometimes I just wish I can give them a hug and cry with them and just exchange energy. Zoom is not the same. So I miss that part. But my life hasn't changed significantly, my particular life, because what I preach, I live. I live a simple life. I spend time in nature every day. Basically, I'm doing the same activities as before. The only good thing for us is my husband doesn't work as much. He still works, but it's very limited. So that has been a really good plus for him because he has discovered things for himself. He says that, wow, I've been overworking and I was busy and I was stressed out. Now I understand that balance, actually, your favorite word, is a good thing and is attainable. And he changed his philosophy around work-life balance completely. And he's been asking the question, how can I maintain this flavor of the work-life balance, because he's less stressed. He can get a nap. He can read a book. He can be with us. He can take a walk alone. So for our family, we found a good rhythm. And so I think for me, I'm able to maintain it, and I don't want to sound arrogant or whatever. I always lived minimally, simply, and things like that. I haven't made my sourdough bread yet, I have to say that I see everybody's making those recipes, but I made a chocolate cake yesterday and it was my birthday.
Yesterday was your birthday, Anna?
Yes.
Oh, happy birthday. I'm sorry I missed it.
And we did a quarantine birthday party. Actually, we did a party outside and two of my friends came and we did have people. My friend came with a mask and I said, no, remove the mask. We don't need masks here. I mean, we can stay far from each other. But we did have a party. We danced. We had sparklers. We had champagne. We made a party. We made everyone dress up to come to whoever came to the party. And it was nice way of celebrating life, the quarantine, forget the birthday. And everybody forgot why they were there because it was a celebration of life, that we're alive, we're healthy. It had a different meaning, this celebration, than other birthday parties. So for me, that's what I see. I see things are going to change big time. Businesses, how people do everything. My friend's company went completely remote. It's a pharmaceutical company. That particular company, before the pandemic, wanted to buy a new location and expand their business, their physical location. During the pandemic, they went completely remote, and now they are never going to have a physical location. How is that for you?
I mean, yeah, things are not going to be the same.
No.
Everything is going to be different. And I think that there might be some growing pains with that. And I also think too, that we'll have to be really careful and intentional. So for folks who this time has been quite different for them, and they like it, and they're finding that there's pieces of it that they really appreciate. And there's also pieces of it that they're like, wow, no, this is not sustainable. It can't keep being this way. I think we have to get really intentional about, so what pieces of this do I want to keep? What pieces of this do I need to shift so that it is sustainable for me?
Mm-hmm.
And know that we have choices here and that we can be intentional. I'd love for everybody listening to take some time with a journal or a piece of paper, just the scratch paper that your kids scribble on and then throw away because they that's headed for the recycle bin. Take that piece of paper and sit down and say so what have I learned about myself during this time? What have I learned about my child during this time? What have I learned about my life during this time? How have my goals and priorities shifted for me, for myself, and for my family? How can I keep those goals and priorities top of mind as things start opening up? And so that I don't fall back into old habits and what feels comfortable, but maybe isn't actually serving me any longer. I think we just have to be aware and intentional.
I love those questions. Yeah, you have a question for your child, for your parenting, for your partner, for yourself. I really love that. Yeah, and I would encourage the listener to take some time to reevaluate, assess their current lifestyle. Yes, we're parenting in crisis now, but we're adapting to it too. I remember in the beginning, I was thrown off my game of my rails. I even panicked before everybody panicked. I've shared this on the podcast. I became more anxious and I started preparing. Listen, I have purchased so much supply in March that I still haven't purchased cleaning supplies or things of that nature from the grocery store. But it took me 2 weeks to get into a rhythm. In the beginning, it was hectic, chaotic. We didn't know, we didn't have dinners together. It was haphazard and it was okay. I understood that this is not normal time. This is completely crisis. And we have to be easy, gentle, because I have lived through, crisis before. So for me, it was kind of okay to accept that and say, this is what's now. And how can I make the most and the best of this situation? What's the priority right now? When they say put your oxygen mask, we are all wearing masks right now, right? Yeah. Symbolically and literally. So for me, the emphasis became my own emotion regulation, my own anger management, my own anxiety management, my own stress management, because everything else will fall into place, but emotions are contagious. If I'm a nervous wreck, if I'm anxious, my child is going to feel the anxiety, my partner too. I have to be this, safety space, create that emotional safety for my daughter, right? I don't want my child also to feel this, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. This is horrible situation. But that became a priority for me. And I started taking steps towards self-care and stress management big time. How about you?
Yeah. So I think for me, my husband and I have been through 2 very difficult times when we added both of our kids. So, with our first one, I had a very traumatic birth. We had a kid who was in the NICU, and who was temperamentally a difficult kid, hard to soothe, took a lot of time and energy. And we were both in grad school at the same time too. And so, and we didn't have childcare. We had a nanny who was part-time, a little bit, but most of the time it was just trading off and on with her. And then with my second one, I had a pretty significant birth injury that kept me on bed rest for the first 3 months of her life. And so we've done crisis parenting before. And so when this happened, we felt like we had the rhythm already there to fall back on. We just we know what to do. This feels familiar, and we just fell into it. And it wasn't really a big transition for us. And I also, really emphasized my own self-care and my own stress management, my own anxiety management, because both my husband and I tend towards anxiety. And my older daughter especially does too. And so we know that in order for her to feel healthy and balanced and safe, that we have to be taking really good care of ourselves. And so that's been a priority for us, because we are the people who set the tone and set the pace and kind of hold the environment, hold the space for the family. And it's important for us it's always important, but particularly in times of stress and uncertainty, to be that port in the storm for each other and for your kids. So yeah, I think pretty similar.
Yes, yes. What I've been telling my clients to do is to take an inventory of your inner resources, your prized possessions and non renewable resources, your time, your attention, and your energy. Where do you direct your time and attention? Where does it go? Because again, I mentioned this on your podcast. When we are stressed out, we tend to have controlling patterns, some of us, organizing, tidying up, and being perfectionistic, because that gives us that sense of comfort, control, and certainty, right? So recognize that you are stressed out and not be like pushing other people, nagging, being on top of them, and annoyingly controlling things. And if you're spending time tidying up the room a million times a day and yelling and being resentful at your family members, accept that, you know what, it's okay. They're home, they're playing all the time. Let go. Maybe engage the other family members to participate and have more chores and be more helpful, but you do your part. Don't do much unnecessary work of tidying up or putting things away and cleaning the counter, whatever, the million times and things like that. But in order to know where your time, energy, and attention goes, you have to take an inventory, sort of, right? If you just go scroll your day in your mind like a movie, go back and say, what did I do today? And if there's nothing special, memorable, enjoyable, fulfilling for yourself, and all you were doing is just picking up after people, tidying up and cleaning and cooking, then maybe reevaluate that, right? And
Yeah.
and you don't also have to do all those Pinterest worthy sourdough breads, I don't know, banana breads, and all of those things. Like, don't be in competition with other people. You know, that's their hobbies. Maybe that's how they do their self-care. Like for me, I have zero interest in learning to cook new dishes. I've been cooking since I was 13. Listen, I hate cooking. I'm not gonna learn to make new things. So be real with yourself and manage your time, your energy, and your attention better. Give it to things and to people that deserve it. And include in that list yourself. That's the main one.
Yeah. And I think along with this inventory, taking stock of what in your daily life drains you of energy and what lights you up, and making sure that there's a good balance of those things in your life. Because if your life is filled with draining things that don't light you up, like, man, that's a recipe for overwhelm and burnout, right? Yeah. I love the inventory idea, Anna. Thank you.
Laura, this is a fascinating topic. These are completely like interesting historical times to be living in. And it's interesting how the year is 2020, right? It has some kind of significance to it. I was looking at my desk and I purchased a planner. It says Big Plans 2020. And I'm like, haha, that was a joke. You know, our plans all flew out the window, whatever we had. So I would love to give like a ping pong style tips to our listener. What has been helpful to you in general? What have you heard from your community? What have we been doing? So let's go.
Yeah.
What are some tips to cut down on the overwhelm, manage the stress, and just be a little joyful and even enjoy this time?
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that 2020 thing. So my word for this year, I always pick one word to kind of set the tone for my year. And it was, because it was 2020, it was vision was my word, like that I wanted to have a clear vision for my life and live from that vision, you know, fulfill that vision. And I think that that's my first tip. I think that that's the thing that has made this time so much better and peaceful for me and my family, is that I sat down with my husband. I sat down with myself first, and then with my husband, and then with my kids in this kind of 3-step process, and set intentions. I got really clear with myself about what I wanted me to feel like in the midst of it and coming out of it. And I got really clear with myself about like what I wanted to happen with my partner relationship during the process. And I got really clear about what do I want my kids to know about their family, about themselves, about their world. at the end of this? What do I want their memories to be? And I let that intention drive every decision I made over the course of the next 3 months. And then I sat down with my husband and I asked him those exact same questions. And then we sat down as a family and had a family meeting. And I asked my kids the exact same questions. How do you want to feel while we're at home together? This is something new. You get to decide, you get to choose. And then we called to mind those intentions every day. I write some of them down almost every day just to bring them forward. And I think being really intentional, especially during a time of stress, empowers you to show up as yourself rather than as a product of your stress.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What about you? Tell me one that's been helping you.
What's been helping me is actually, again, I'm using your word, intentionally pausing and taking breathing breaks. And that was I had 3 goals for the year. And that was one of the goals, that throughout the day, I am going to intentionally stop, pause, plant my feet on the ground for just a quick moment even, and to take intentional breaths and be aware of my breathing. Maybe it's just 1 breath, maybe it's a set of 5 breaths, maybe it's before jumping on a Zoom call or after a Zoom call. And I have been very mindful and intentional about that. And I notice a big difference. And how I do that, I plant my feet, I feel that the gravity pulls me down. I loosen my shoulders. I, strengthen my back. And I just relax and take a breath and follow my breath for 1 second, and be sort of with myself. And it's just such a grounding experience throughout the day. And the more I do it, the more I catch myself doing it. In the beginning, I was forgetting it. I'm like, wow, today, did I do it today? But now I notice that I actually am looking forward to doing it. When I'm about to cook, I intentionally do that. So that has been helpful. What else?
It sounds like you have a trigger, like a trigger that it tells you it's time to do this. And our bodies are really good, our brains are really good at pairing those things, right? And so I absolutely agree. So if you're doing that and it's a new practice for you, putting up something like a hot pink Post-it on a few walls in your house, move them every 3 days so that they're in different places. Because once they're in a place, our brains are really efficient and they skip over things that they've seen a lot, right? So keep them moving. But whenever you see the Post-it, it doesn't even have to say anything on it. Have that check in, or do it, every time you go to the bathroom, or every time you take a drink of water. Find some trigger that you do regularly, and to trigger that pause, that check-in, that grounding moment. Yeah.
But that's there is a good exercise I suggest to my clients, usually a gratitude cue. For example,
that was the word I was looking for. It wasn't trigger.
I understand. That's the cue, right? And listen, I'm not the native English speaker, and here I am giving So let's say people say, do your gratitudes and things like that. When you are walking your dog, when you get the leash, maybe that's your cue to start your gratitude every day, because you're pairing it with an activity that you already do automatically every single day. I get up in the morning and I go right to my coffee maker. Maybe for me, that's the time to do my stretching, which I do actually. I do some qigong and some movement when I'm making my coffee. So pairing it with an already established automatic activity, a new skill, a habit is fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. It's I use other environmental cues too for those types of things. So whenever we hear like an ambulance or a fire truck siren going off in our family, we send loving kindness. So and that's just it happens randomly. Whenever we have it, we say, oh, I hope everybody is safe and protected. And we just send it right then. We say it out loud. My kids say it. Sometimes I forget and they're the ones who say it, but we do that as a kind of a regular practice, because there's always, you always hear, every few days that happens. And so finding, there's one particular bird, a chickadee is kind of has a call that's very unique. And whenever we hear it, we have a kind of a moment of kind of grounding and present moment that we do together as a family. And so like it doesn't even have to be like habits. It can be just things that you regularly hear and notice. You can pair something that's good for your stress system.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have any other tips, Anna, that you'd like to share with us? Or is it my turn to share a tip?
I think it's your turn now.
Okay. Good. All right. So I have one too. So one thing that we've done in my family that's been really helpful is consciously and proactively prioritizing each other's self-care. So I'm parenting with a partner. He is big into golfing. I do yoga and walking. Those are the things. And so every week we sit down and say, okay, I say, honey, when are we going to make sure you get your golfing? And he says, yeah, and honey, when are we going to make sure that you get your walking and your yoga? Let's look at our schedules and make sure we can get it in. Oh, I notice you have an early morning on Thursday. You'll probably want to make sure that you get up early. I'll take care of making the coffee so that you can do that. And I want to join this golf league at the club on Tuesday evenings. Is that okay with you? And we discuss and make sure that we're getting those things. And as a result, my husband has golfed more right now than he did all last summer. He's so much happier and so much healthier for it. But I think sitting down and being proactive and conscious and not just assuming like if someone needs something that they'll ask for it, but like actually sitting down and saying, I want to make sure that you're well taken care of, and have the other person say, yeah, and I want to make sure you're well taken care of. Like that's an act of love and it feels good.
Yeah, it does. It does. And remember the kids are watching again about the modeling part, right?
They are. And and we do that with our kids too. So my 7-year-old said, Mom, I've been feeling like I've been missing you. I really want this week to go on 2 nature walks, just you and me. Okay, let's make that happen. Let's make sure, let's put it on the calendar. We'll make sure it happens. When that's part of your daily life, it's easy to do.
Yes.
At first it may feel awkward, but soon it just becomes, we check in our family, we check in with each other. In our family, we make sure everybody's getting their needs met.
Yeah, that's great. So for me, nature has been very healing all throughout my life, but now it has become this sanctuary, this important place. I walk like 3 times a day now. I go by myself in the morning, early morning, and I go with a friend who we've been sort of quarantining together. And then I do an evening walk with my husband or with the friend or with everybody together. So it's been amazing. And we've been watching little baby deer, does, and we've been seeing a lot of interesting birds and nature, and just engaging with nature is so powerful and healing. So I've been getting a lot of nature, and I can't emphasize how powerful it is for stress management, mood management, and just being in nature relaxes your eyes, your muscles, right?
Because there's so much research on it. There is so much,
research on it. It's just cleanses you, your energy, and even if it's raining, I'm out there. So rain or shine, you see me walking. So nature walking has been a really big resource for me.
That's awesome. Yes, for me too. Another thing that we've been doing between me and my husband after the kids are in bed, and if you have older kids, they can maybe, if they don't go to bed so early, my kids go to bed super early because they get up super early. But we've been having at least 2 nights a week where we don't watch TV and we don't have our phones, and we do something together that is connecting. Sometimes that's just sitting and chatting. Sometimes that's playing cards. Last night we played a game called Sushi Go, but most of the time we try to make it something that is connecting, that we can laugh during. Sometimes we learn something new, like sometimes he teaches me chess because I'm terrible at chess. But like we do that. And there's, once a month or so, we don't eat dinner with the kids right now, or maybe even more than that. I think it's probably once a week, we don't eat dinner with the kids. And we have a date night together at home, where we cook together like we did before we had kids, that lovely slow process of cooking together, with a glass of wine. And I don't know, maybe you didn't do that, but that's something that we remember from the early days of our couple relationship.
No, I don't do that because my husband doesn't cook. I mean, he makes a few quote unquote signature things, but that's about that. That's about it. And I don't particularly enjoy cooking. As I mentioned, I do it because like I have to. But I was encouraging to my clients is, we're already doing enough family time. Don't be preoccupied and try to like exceed all expectations and prioritize family time now, right? Especially during this difficult time. Now it's the time to encourage solo, independent time, independent rest, independent play, independent entertainment, because we're on top of one another in close spaces in lockdown. And I think that's enough family time, and so we have to loosen those expectations, those structures that we had worked previously so hard to put into place. I think that's what I've been encouraging to my clients. And hopefully, if you're doing that, you're not feeling guilty. My friend told me that she feels guilty for not being so engaged and present with her daughter. And I said, it doesn't look like from outside the way, I look into your life. To me, you're the same parent. She says, but inside she doesn't feel like before the pandemic, and during the pandemic, she herself doesn't feel like she is the same mom. So I said, well, these are your internal feelings, because I see you parent the same way, and I'm sure your daughter experiences you that way. So sometimes you have to take care of your own inner guilt or unworthiness or the shame or the other stuff that may surface right now. Because if you're not working, if you're not performing, if you're not doing your regular things, then maybe you're feeling less than. Also, it trickles down into your parenting, right? So separate those feelings and hopefully, deal with them and look at the stories behind those feelings. This is a good time to reflect, to contemplate, to even call a friend, because everybody is available, to have a listening partner for our pain, for our suffering. I think look at it that way and don't be alone and suffer. And with that, I want to again mention that I still offer the weekly free support calls for my community, and they have been phenomenal. The regulars show up to those calls and friendships have blossomed, and we have come to know each other so deeply. We've shared some deep, vulnerable, some stuff that people we were so moved to hear what people share. And it's been just such an amazing experience, the support calls. So join our support call, join our Facebook community to learn the details when I do them. There's no opt-in, there's no email, and they're completely free. And somebody asked me, are you doing this out of the goodness of your heart? Yes, I am, because I need those calls too. I love my community the way they love me. What else do you have? Do we have any other tips?
Yeah. So one tip, if you are feeling caught up in shame and that you should be doing more, a good word to listen for in your thoughts is the word should. So when we say the word should to ourselves, or we have a little voice in our head that's whispering how things should be or how we should be, that is usually an indication that you are not in your conscious brain, that you're a subconscious talking to you, and it's filled with scripts that you learned growing up, and fears and worries and guilt. And so being pretty vigilant for the word should, and then once you hear it, ask yourself, is that true? Like, is that really true? And the other thing too, so there's this quote from Magda Gerber. I don't know if you know who she is. She's
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So she's one of the people that that drew me to respectful parenting in the beginning. But one of her quotes is, do less, observe more, enjoy most. And I think that really pervades my entire approach to time with my kids. I do way less. I mean, so I hear from a lot of people that they aren't playing with their kids enough. And like, Anna, I teach a class about how to use play therapy with your kids, and I hardly ever play with my kids. most of the time if I'm present with them, I'm sitting back and I'm observing and I'm not getting in their way, because I think that as grown-ups, we get in our kids' way a lot. They do not need us to show them how to play. They do not need us to teach them how to be kids. They are inherently driven beings that will do what they need developmentally by pure instinct. And we can really give ourselves permission to step way back and get out of their way. We hammer them. We do. And then we ask, like, why can't they play independently? Because they've learned that they can't. Because we've gotten in the way. We've taught them.
Because you have created dependency by being too engaged, too involved, too commentary, too narrating and referee type of parent. And now they're not enjoying the independent play. And it's not good for them not to play independently. And we constantly, when children are playing independently, I hear sometimes parents or teachers, because I talk at early childhood educators too, at conferences, and I tell them, when children are playing nicely and they're engaged and involved, do not even go and throw a comment, nice playing. Nobody needs your comment. Don't interrupt the mental, beautiful process that is happening.
They're in flow. They're in a flow state.
Yes.
Like, if you get in a flow state, you know what it's like to be jerked out of one.
I will choke you to death if I was like in the middle of this flow creative process and you came in and said, "Nice job." I would say, I would just do something, very irresponsible. Let's put it that way. So I want to plug and mention the episode that we did together back in March. I'm looking at my app. It's episode 221, how to play with your kids when you don't like playing. Because there are some people who don't like playing. And yes, you have permission not to play. It's not going to make you feel, less than a parent, or you're not a bad parent if you don't enjoy playing with your kids. What do you enjoy doing with your kids? There is plenty of other things that you can do with your kids other than playing.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And play, we hear that play is the work of childhood. Play is important, and it is. And it is children's work. We get to be playful and we get to be a part of that. And it can be super fun if you open yourself up to playfulness. And oftentimes if you see yourself as not being good at play, or you don't enjoy being playful, there's likely a hurting child within you who is given the message that your playfulness wasn't acceptable. And there's probably healing to do there at some point. Yeah. But like, playfulness doesn't, like, being playful with your kid doesn't mean that you have to get down on the floor and do their play work. That's their work. But you can certainly
boring.
Right. But you can certainly be playful in your own life. Like, so for me, drawing is playful. And so sometimes I will sit down with my colored pencils that are mine, and I have a firm boundary around it because they're very nice. And my sketching paper, and I'll just gather their art supplies too and put them right next to me, and I'll just start working. And before I know it, I've got two little kids snuggled up next to me working too. And we're all doing independently what's good for our souls. And it feels really connecting. We're in this kind of flow state together, vibing with each other, and it's beautiful. But it's not effort, like, it's not draining to me because I'm not taking responsibility for them doing it. I'm not calling them, saying, come over to come draw with me. Like, there's none of that. I'm just inviting them.
I know. In that episode, I remember I mentioned that whenever I visited my friend back then, when we used to visit one another, she would say, let's play a board game. I'm like, listen, would you stop inviting me to play a board game? I don't want to play a board game with the kids. Let them play whatever they want, and let us chat together. I came to visit you. Like, I don't want to play a board game with the kids. And so, yes. And so this is good advice. I like that.
Okay. And Anna, so I know you shared a couple other resources. Did you have any others that you wanted to share?
The resources. I have been watching Netflix. I'm going to share a show that I watched. It's not going to be a parenting resource. I haven't been reading much. I haven't been listening to podcasts at all. And that's a tip I would even encourage people to do. Do this time to unwind and do something enjoyable, because it's a stressful time. We have to engage in antidote to stress type of activities, which is laughter, play, love, right? Instead of learning about trauma-informed parenting and things like that, or working on our wounds. Forget that. I've been listening to music every day. I have a bunch of playlists on Spotify. I can share with people the dance Spotify playlist that I played at the conference. It's really great. So I've been listening to music a lot. I can share that as a resource, my playlists. And I've been watching Netflix shows. The last one I watched is Dead to Me, which is really good. It's bad and it's good, but it's good. It's so good. It's so have you watched it?
Oh, I totally have. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
It's funny and serious, and it has everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the last show I watched, and I encourage my listener to check it out. What Anna Seawald is watching. How about you? What resources would you suggest?
So I have a workbook that your listeners can download if they want to. It's called the 3 R's, Rhythms, Routines, and Rituals. And it walks you through the process that I use with my family to set intentions and then build a kind of a rhythm within our family from those intentional places. So I'll give you the link for that workbook. So I've been exploring, we have an Amazon Echo Dot thing, I don't know, like one of those speaker things. And we have been
the creepy things.
It's totally creepy. They're totally creepy. We unplug it when we're done using it. So we plug it in intentionally and use it, and then we unplug it. So it's not just listening to us behind the scenes. Because, one time we had it plugged in and the girls were having a really big disagreement, and it interrupted us and said, here are 5 strategies for calming down when you're angry. Do you need...
And it was from you, probably. Was it your own article? No, I'm kidding.
That's so funny. And so after that, we were like, oh, let's unplug this. That's what's always happening. But we've been finding some playlists that are fun in that one. And my kids have a few songs that they love dancing to that are super silly that they play and like on repeat, and we all dance around the house to them. So one is called Gummy Bear. And it's like a techno.
I know. Gummy.
Yes,
I know that song. It's such an annoying song, but it gets stuck in your mind, right?
And you can't help but like start dancing,
Yes.
And then the other one is It's Raining Tacos.
Oh, that one I don't know.
It's so silly. It's so silly, but they love it. And my husband is a big taco fan. He always is eating tacos. So anyway,
so is my daughter.
Laughing and together and not being afraid to join in that silliness. Like even if you don't want to. So my daughter.
Not everything. Sorry to interrupt you, but not everything in life has to be educational. It has to have a meaning or a point, and we have to do this for this purpose, right? We have forgotten how to drop into the present moment and just be and enjoy without feeling guilty for the silliest, meaningless, quote unquote, things that we do.
I think those things are so meaningful. I grew up in a home where I never saw my parents rest. I never saw, hardly ever did they rest and relax. My mom still struggles to do that when my dad is around. She's much better at it when he's off doing something else, then she can kind of let herself relax. But when he's around and he's always bustling, he has this frenetic energy she feels like she has to be up and doing something too. And that's how I grew up. And that's something that I think is so important to teach our kids how to rest, how to fulfill ourselves, how to fill our cups. And sometimes dancing around the house to a silly song that's like mind numbing is part of that,
Can I recommend a song that I enjoy and listen? I'm not sure if it's a silly song. It's called Dance Monkey.
Yeah, I like that one too. Yeah.
Dance with me.
Yeah.
It's so catchy and good. I just love that song. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I think that those are great resources.
Okay. Well, Laura, it's been a blast. We can go on and on and on. I would love to hear from the listener what tips it resonated with them, what their experience is like. They can join us in our private Facebook community, join our support call, follow us on Instagram to see how we are living our life, and the book giveaways that I have been doing from our guests of the podcast. Again, for full episode show notes, visit authenticparenting.com. Send us your parenting questions for future episodes. Me and Laura will answer your parenting questions. And if you have a comment, question, or feedback about this episode or the podcast in general, info@authenticparenting.com is my email. With that, Laura, sending you a big, safe virtual hug.
You too. Hugging you right back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was so great to be here.